up, YouTube? My name is Krystal, and for those of you who don't know, I started my channel a couple months ago, basically following my motherhood journey. Today, I thought I would film my labor and delivery story, just sharing exactly the moment that I became a mom and my family became a family of 3. So, it is currently morning and I have my cup of coffee with me, so grab your cup of coffee, or if it's evening, your glass of wine, whatever, your cup of tea, and stay tuned for my story. So, just a little background information. My son was born 3.5 weeks early, and I thought my water broke a week before I had my son. So I'll start with like when I thought my water broke and then when it really broke and everything. I was 36 weeks and like 5 days, and it was a Saturday. We were at home. I was working on a piece of furniture and I was getting frustrated because it wasn't doing whatever I wanted it to do. And I told my husband I was just gonna take a break and go shower because we had a birthday dinner to go to that evening. So I go and I'm about to get in the shower, but before I even step foot in the shower, I noticed water is kind of trickling down my leg, and I instantly thought my water broke. But I didn't tell my husband. I didn't want to scare him. I wanted to be sure, so I waited for it to keep happening, and it did. And so I told my husband, I think my water broke. And then I called my mom and I told her, and of course at this time she's 2 hours away from us. She's visiting family, and she just told me that I should probably call the nurse and call my doctor's office and let them know what happened and see what they want me to do. And she said, the nurse said that it sounds like my water broke and to go into the hospital because if it's my water breaking, then obviously I'm going to be going into labor. So I'm 36 weeks and 5 days pregnant. I am not prepared whatsoever. I had maybe half of my hospital bag packed. My son's nursery wasn't done. A lot of his clothes weren't washed yet. I wanted to wash his outfit that I planned to bring him home in draft and all that kind of stuff. So I'm just, I'm kind of freaking out, but it wasn't a gush of water or anything. So I knew that I had time. And we went to Walmart because I even needed to pick up a few things that I hadn't got yet for a hospital bag. And we went to Walmart, and then we went to the hospital, and I was in triage for a while, and she just wanted to do a little test to make sure that it was my water that broke. And we were there for a few hours, and it ended up being negative. Every test, she did 2 tests, I believe, and every one, they both came back negative, saying it wasn't water, it wasn't my water breaking. So what ended up happening, she sent me home, and it was weird because I was starting to get contractions, but they weren't bad whatsoever. I could just feel some tightening in my stomach. And so I was having little contractions, but according to the tests and everything, my water did not break. So the following morning, my in-laws came over and brought us coffee. We were just hanging out, and I was kind of breaking down everything that the doctor told me, and my mother-in-law thought it could have been your water or whatever, and we were kind of looking it up, and I guess somehow, maybe this is completely incorrect, but there's 2 sacs, and technically your first one can tear without affecting the other one. So that was a possibility. I don't know if that's true or whatever, but that was a possibility of what could have happened. And but my mother-in-law was very she's I bet you're gonna go into labor soon. So I'm still even the following morning, I was having some contractions, but nothing came out of it, of course. So then Monday comes around. Monday night, I have contractions again, and they're like 6 to 8 minutes apart, nothing crazy, but I can just feel them. And then nothing comes out of it, of course. Tuesday night, contractions, and this time they're like 5 to 6 minutes apart, and nothing comes out of it. They only last for about 2 hours, and then they stop. Wednesday night, same thing, contractions. I think that night they only lasted about an hour. And then Thursday night, well, Thursday is the day before I went into labor, and I was miserable that day before I went into labor. It was just, I was like super uncomfortable back pain. I was just like abnormally tired. Obviously, at this point in my pregnancy, I'm exhausted basically all the time, but I was just like, I'm beat, and I cannot, like, I did not want to do anything. My husband came home from work that day. I told him, like, I don't think I want to cook dinner tonight. I was just tired and exhausted, and my back really, really hurt. So I had an exercise ball that I would like do the little exercises on that they tell you to, and I was like really trying to like stretch out my hips, and just, it was like uncomfortable. There was nothing that I can do that would ease any of the discomfort. And so my husband gets home. I told him, like, I can't make dinner tonight. I'm sorry. I'm really feeling, I'm feeling really pregnant today. And then, so I always joke with him, he made me pancakes for dinner that night, and he burnt them, but at this point I didn't care, because at least he cooked for me, and I didn't have to cook dinner. And I just remember I was folding Caden's laundry, and I got in the shower because I'm like, I just need to take like a hot shower, and maybe that'll relieve some of the like achiness. And my shower head is like a removable shower head, so I remember getting it as like hot as I can stand, and I put it on my lower back for like 5 minutes, and finally it kind of eased the pain. So I get out, get dressed and all that, and then I asked my husband to give me a foot massage, which he did. And like that was like the end of my night. We went in, like, watched a movie, and the next morning, all week long I had been telling my husband, like, I think I'm gonna go into labor soon. I think I'm gonna go into labor. And Friday morning, I told him, like, I've been having contractions since 4 a.m. I think you should stay home today. I think today's the day. And because every day I basically said that, he was like, you know, like, this has been happening every day and nothing comes out of it, so I'm gonna go to work, but if something happens, call me and let me know. Before we go any further in the story, I did want to say I went into labor on Friday that morning, but 2 days before, on Wednesday, I had my like weekly checkup with my OB. And when I went, because like I had been contracting, I thought maybe I would be dilated, and I wasn't dilated whatsoever. I was 50% effaced, but no dilation. So I remember even after that appointment, I texted my husband, like, here's the update, and he was like, cool, like, so the baby's not coming anytime soon, basically. And I was trying to be hopeful, like, well, you know, it could literally change overnight. And sure enough, 2 nights later, it changed, because Friday morning, as my husband went off to work, I was like repositioning myself in bed and getting comfortable again, and I felt some water. And I thought maybe like I'm just, you know, over like reacting and excited and hoping that my water broke or something. So I'm like, no, maybe not, like, don't get too excited. And then again, I repositioned myself, and then I felt more water. So I'm like, okay, I think this is my water breaking, and I get up out of bed, and the second that I stood up out of bed, it like gushed, puddles on the floor of water. And I knew my water definitely broke. So I called my husband and I was like, you need to come back. And he was seriously like, it had only been 10 minutes since he left. And he came back. He didn't even make it onto the freeway to get to work. And then I called my mom and I told her like to not go into work, and we were going to be spending the day at the hospital to have a baby. And then I called my mother-in-law. So at this point, it's like 6:30 in the morning. My husband and I, because I'm like, it's gushing and puddles of water, I am more of in a hurry to get to the hospital than like when I thought my water broke before, because that was just like trickling a couple drips of water. And like ideally I wanted to get ready and put makeup on and do my hair and then go to the hospital, but I couldn't. Like there was no, it was a lot of water. I just needed to get there. So we pack our stuff up. At this point, obviously, because I was scared from the last time of not being prepared, that whole week I spent nesting and getting everything 100% ready. So our hospital bag's ready, my diaper bag is ready, and we just put it all in the car and we head to the hospital. We get to the hospital around maybe like 7:30 or 8. I want to say it was closer to 8. And we went in triage. They wanted to make sure that my water did indeed break. And of course, while I'm in triage, like another gush of water comes out. So she doesn't even want to do like the test to the lab because she clearly can see that my water broke. And at this point, the nurse or the doctor on call was in surgery. She wanted to contact the doctor to see what to do moving forward, and it was taking quite a while. So she's like, you know what, your water is obviously broken and you need to get into a room, so I'm just going to bypass the doctor and get you in the room. So we get into our room around 8:30, and my nurse was absolutely amazing. She comes in, you know, like we get everything dialed in, and she checks me to see my progress. And at this point, she says I'm 80% effaced and I was dilated to 1 centimeter. So we're just waiting around, and then my mother-in-law get there, my husband's grandma, my father-in-law, and pretty soon after that, my mom and my sister get there. Because I knew that I wasn't going to have a baby within like the next 3 hours, I did want a lot of company there, so that way I wasn't bored and my husband and I just weren't like sitting around waiting anxiously for the baby. So we did actually like having a lot of our family members there. So we're just hanging out. I'm like slowly getting to, like, my contractions are starting up slowly, and I want to say around 11 they're getting like decently intense to where I can feel them. But like 11 to 12:30 maybe they were picking up, and then after 12:30 they completely slowed down. So 12:30 they're slowing down, almost non-existent. I can't feel them anymore. And so that happens for like the next hour. And closer to 1:30 my doctor or my nurse came in, and she said, she told me that we needed to pick up my contractions again, because at this point my water's been broken for over 6 hours, and you know, I was contracting and now I'm not for some reason. So she said they would give me some kind of medication or something to induce my labor and like get the contractions picking up again, or I can walk around the floor for like 30-40 minutes and see if that'll like kickstart it. So I chose to just walk around the floor, and so we did that, and we got back into our room around 2:40 because she told me to be back for sure by 2:45, and then we would see like an hour after if they picked up again. And they did. They picked up around like 3:30 or 4. So once I started contracting again, she let me contract for a little bit and then checked me. And at that point I was 3 centimeters and I'm pretty sure it was 100% effaced. So 100% effaced and 3 centimeters dilated. And then for like 3 or 4, they're picking up. 5 o'clock comes and they are like brutal. They are hurting me pretty bad, taking my breath away. When I like get a contraction, I need everyone to be quiet, and like just those kind of contractions. And then that they continue to just get worse over time. So like 6 o'clock, they're getting really bad. She offered the epidural, and I chose not to at that point, simply because I just wanted to go as far as I can on my own. And then I wasn't against getting the epidural. You'll hear that I do end up getting it, but I wanted to labor as much as I can on my own and not get it until I felt like I really needed it. So they're pretty bad, and she checks me right before I go, right before the nurses like switch shifts, which happened at 7 o'clock. So before she switched shifts, I told her I'm still fine without the epidural, but she checked me and I'm at 5 centimeters at this point. So 5 centimeters dilated at 7 o'clock, which is now like 13 hours after my water broke. And then the nurses switch shifts, so I get a new nurse, and she asks how I'm doing with the pain. I tell her I'm fine. 7:30 rolls around, and they're like even worse than before. So I'm just about ready to get the epidural, and I continued to push through. So I probably didn't get the epidural until around 8 o'clock, but I remember getting, with each contraction, I would say, I need the epidural, and then as the contraction would end and fade out, I felt like, okay, I'm fine and I don't need it. And then another one would come and I would say, I need the epidural, and then it'd fade out and I would feel fine. So that happened from like 7:30 to 8-ish, and then I told her I absolutely need it and I need it now. And my hospital was really good about getting me my epidural really quickly. So definitely by 8:30, I had gotten the epidural, it kicked in, and I'm ready to just relax and rest, hopefully get a little bit of sleep. And it like wore off. I don't know, it was the weirdest thing. I was able to rest for maybe an hour, and then I felt my contractions again. Not 100%, but maybe like 75-80% of it I can really feel. And I remember asking my mom, like, should I be able to feel my contractions still? Because this, like, I didn't feel them in the beginning, so why am I feeling them now? And she's like, no, like, you shouldn't be able to feel them. So I told my nurse, like, I'm still feeling them and it's really uncomfortable. I just feel like it didn't even work. So I got another dose, and I'm like doing okay, but around 10 o'clock she checks me again, and at this point I am 8 centimeters dilated. And I told her, like, I just feel like I'm about to have this baby. And she says, like, don't worry, you're only 8 centimeters, there's no way you can have him yet. We've got quite a while until you're gonna even start pushing, or until you even can mentally prepare yourself to get ready to push. She's thinking we're gonna have this baby like in the next 8 hours, and I was hoping within the next few hours that we would have him. And now the epidural's really fully kicked in since I got the second dose, but I start getting like really shaky and like chattering, and my husband was kind of concerned. Let me remind you that this is our first time having a baby, first experience, so my husband has no clue what to expect. I have no clue what to expect. I just feel like I'm like getting anxious and out of breath and like hyperventilating, and the nurse explained like that's pretty normal. some women, I guess, when they're like when they're getting ready to start pushing, that happens. I don't know why, but to me it did. And so I'm feeling like really out of breath at this point. And she took my oxygen levels, but she said everything was like perfect. So she gave me an oxygen mask. I think she only did it to like make me feel better about it. And so I'm just shaky. Everyone's kind of getting blurry at this point. Like everything's fuzzy. I don't remember everyone's like exact words. So I'm just really out of it at this point. And midnight comes around, and I really feel like I feel like he's right there and he's gonna pop out any second. And she comes and checks me again, and sure enough, I think I was 10 centimeters, 9 or 10. So she's like, oh, we're gonna get ready to start pushing here pretty soon. But of course, my doctor on call is in surgery. So I'm either gonna start pushing without a doctor and like have my baby without the doctor there, or we're gonna wait. 12:45, we start pushing without the doctor, which I think is pretty normal. Up until like I had my son, I didn't know that you like start your delivery process without a doctor unless that's not normal, but I guess that's pretty normal that your doctor just comes in towards the end of it. So I start pushing at 12:45, and with the idea in mind that my doctor is going to be out of surgery pretty soon and ready to come pull this kid out. That doesn't happen. At 12:50, like 12:50, 12:55 in the morning, my nurse tells me to stop pushing. She says, no, you need to wait. The doctor isn't ready. We're not, the doctor won't be in here for another 10 minutes at least. So I'm like, kid's halfway there, and I feel him halfway there for sure. So I'm kind of irritated that I can't keep pushing and we're waiting on the doctor. And not only that, but my husband was doing the counts and he kept counting, so I kept pushing, and the nurse is like, no, like you need to stop pushing. So that was fun. So like I probably pushed a little more than I should have, which is fine because once I stop pushing, it's not going to do anything. So that happened, and then around a little after 1, like 1 a.m., maybe like 1:03, 1:05, I don't know, my doctor comes in and she's like, okay, we're going to have a baby. And I push, and then my son is born at 1:11 a.m. He was born. I remember hearing his little perfect cry for the first time. I instantly did, what do you call that? Sorry. Skin-to-skin bonding, and my husband cut the umbilical cord. And at that moment, everyone else in the whole room was blurry and fuzzy, and I didn't even care what they were saying. It was all about that moment where my son was placed on my chest and I was a mom, which is the most incredible but emotional feeling. So, so then we did skin-to-skin bonding for like a little bit over an hour. In that like first few minutes, family did come in just to see him. I didn't even care because I didn't notice them. They were like, seriously, if it were like a movie, they were completely blurred and fuzzied out. And all I could see was my son. So I could care less that people were coming in, that, a lot of people at first were saying like, oh, you could pick if you don't want your family members to come in and see him right away because that is your bonding time. I didn't mind because it was such a special moment that all I could focus on was my son. And I'm glad that they got to come in and see him in his first few minutes of his life. So we did skin-to-skin bonding, and then they weighed him and measured him and all that stuff. So he was 6 pounds, 12 ounces. I delivered at 37 weeks and I believe 5 days. And He was 20 inches long, so he was really perfectly healthy. Yeah, I don't know, he was just a healthy baby. Everything went well and smooth. I think if you count it all up, I was in labor for, so I think if you count it all up, I was technically in labor for 21 hours, but I was in active labor for, what do they say active labor is, 5 or 8 centimeters? Might be 5 or 8. I don't know, if it's 8, then I was in active labor for 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 7 hours, 6, 7 hours. So that is my labor and delivery story. Nothing crazy, thank God, nothing crazy happened. Everything went pretty smoothly, and I gave birth to a perfectly healthy little boy. Yeah, so I hope you guys enjoyed my story, and I will see you guys next time.